very special episode of A Doge's Breakfast. Today I'm going to break the mould a little bit and I'm going to do an episode on me painting a little toy soldier. So I'm painting the last two models I need for my Scar Army, which is two Black Ogryn Boarding Party. They are all assembled and undercoated and ready to go. So I'm going to take you through the entire process from start to finish. You will probably notice that it's been sped up, but the total time I'm expecting this to take is about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to paint these two dudes. So wish me luck. I'm going to get started right now. So here we go. Alrighty guys, I've sped up these videos to speed times 4, so you'll see me moving at lightning pace. But anyway, so here I've started out just by airbrushing some straight white. Now I do this to create depth of shadows and give you a bit of an idea of where your highlights and so on should be placed on the model. The main reason for doing this is basically that. It also helps when you're painting a colour such as the colours I'm doing this model, which is yellow, because trying to paint yellow over a black base is extremely difficult. So here I am just cleaning out the airbrush, which is a very important part of the maintenance and equipment of that tool. Pulling out the yellow now. You can see there's the white. Fairly simple. So I mix up my colours in one of these little things usually, which is when it's not a specifically airbrush designed colour. Mix in a bit of water and some airbrush liquid, pour it into the airbrush, and then we go. So this one, because it's a yellow, it's obviously going to be a very lacking in pigment, so I've actually done about 4 or 5 coats of this yellow to get a nice smooth colour. It's a bit hard to see because I'm going so quickly with the camera speed, but it is actually being gone over each section several times. So the yellow itself is the main colour that I chose as the highlight colour for my Crix Army. It's a bit of an odd one, but I quite enjoy it. It's also because it's a complementary colour of purple, which is the other army colour. So the army looks pretty cool. It's a bit of a funny story. I started painting this army about 4 years ago, and I haven't actually got the colours that I used to paint the army with anymore. But I'm still trying to come as close as I can. So you can actually see some of the other guys in the army just at the back there. But so here we're going for the purple. I've used a Vallejo colour for this. It's a royal purple. It's not exactly the same as the original colour that I used, but it's pretty close. Just blocking in the detail here and using a fairly large brush. I find that when you have good brush control, you can actually paint pretty much anywhere you need to, and it's good at this stage. I'm not really worried about getting colours anywhere else. So a couple of thin coats over the white to make sure it's a nice even colour with the purple, so fairly simple to do. So next I've gone for silver. It's easy to get silver on other areas and it can be a bit hard to paint over it smoothly, so I like to usually do the silver fairly early. This is also a Vallejo model colour. I tend to lay this on fairly thickly for pretty much all of my base coats. I try to do as few coats as possible because my focus, look, I can paint to a fairly high standard, but I don't generally try to worry about that for the majority of troops. I think it's far more important that you enjoy your painting and get your models out on the table as quick as possible. So I'm going as fast as I can, and ergo thick coats is better because it comes a lot quicker. So with most of these Vallejo colours, they do actually come out very thin even with quite a thick coat, so it's not too much of a worry to do that. Yeah, so this is pretty cool seeing it at fast speed, isn't it? This is the first time I've watched this, so that's a silver all done, I think. It is. So going to use a bit of brown. Oh no, I've gone a bit more of the purple. There you go. Waited for that first couple of coats to dry and then just smoothing that out with another coat. Fairly easy. Sometimes I do use a little bottle to paint a paint bottle and I blue tack the model to it. I sometimes do that to give me something to hold on to, but in this case I haven't worried about it because I was going to be doing it quite quickly. I've gone on to the brown now, which is going to be the base coat colour for all of the wood and all of the leather sections. I like to lay out all my base coats at once, which is basically now at the start of the process, and then I like to unify all the colours with a couple of shades of washes, which will bring the colour intensity level down, but it does actually bring all the colours together, so you'll see that fairly soon. I think I've got maybe one or two other colours to go first though. So this brown, again, laying it on quite thick. Both the models are identical, which is a shame, but sometimes they come like that. So what colour am I doing here? Oh yes, bone. Bone is for the bone sections, obviously, the little fish skeleton at the back there. Ropes and also cloth. And his teeth. And bones on his necklace. So the whole feel of my army was supposed to be very, very piratey, because the first models actually painted for the army was the other three of these guys, believe it or not. And then I know the models get reviled quite a lot, but they're actually some of my favourites. I don't know why. I just like them. I think the sea monkeys look awesome. So we're finished up with the bone now. We're waiting for that to dry. And I've gone for the bases now. Again, I used a GW paint, a scorched brown for these bases. So this is the PP model. I think it's Battlefield Brown or something like that. PP colour. And I just basically block in all the sand. Easy as you like. It's not quite identical, but it is pretty close, and when I finish the base up, hopefully they'll look fairly similar. Peaches has arrived. Peach, I'm doing some commentary here, please. Okay, so base is all done, and I'm now going to start with the skin. So this is the trickiest part, because when I originally did these models, I used scorched brown from the GW colour, and I used a bleach bone, and I used black, and I created a skin tone for these guys that made them look pretty cool. You'll be able to see them at the end when I take a photo of all the finished models, but because I don't have those colours, I'm now trying to replicate something that I did 4 years ago. So that's obviously not going to work very well, but hopefully I can get it fairly close. So the first stage of that process is mostly black with some of that dark brown and a tiny hint of the bone, and it's basically a very thin coat over the white, and you can see how thin it is there when I'm painting it on. It's basically partially translucent. And I like to do that because it gives you the idea of where your highlights need to go, and it makes the whole process a little bit easier. So I actually just do the one model from start to finish on this for the skin tone on this video here. So you can see me doing the base coats on both, but then I'll just pick up that other guy. Very important to not get any of this colour on the yellow. So it's really hard to make yellow look that vibrant again. So, and here we go with the highlights. So I've mixed in a little bit more of the bone to that initial base colour, and just a tiny hint of the initial dark brown colour, the scorched brown equivalent. And I'm basically highlighting all of the areas that were left there by the... I'm actually on the phone there, that's funny. Someone called me, work call, classic. That's why the models at the bottom are not being held, but still managing to push along, which is cool. So yeah, just basically highlighting the skin tone up, and each time you do a little coat like this, you want the colour to be quite thin and translucent. And if you do go a little bit thick with the highlight colour, or you've gone too watery or anything, you just wash your brush out and smooth it out with a little bit of water. It's one of the advantages of painting with a fairly moist sort of paint. So the various stages of this, I like to, when I did the initial guys, I did quite a good job on them. I was working in and out of the colour a lot. Like I'd do some shading and then I'd re-highlight and then I'd shade it back in and get quite a deep sort of colour. But for these guys, I'm not going to worry too much about that. It's just going to be a few tones, a few highlights, and then a few shades fairly quickly. This is obviously the most in-depth part because the rest of it's fairly simple. So you can see I'm taking a lot of time on the skin. It's the most important part of the model, in my opinion, the skin. Generally, I usually paint inside out, which means I paint the model as if it was getting dressed. So you start with the skin and then you put each of the layers over the top of that. But with this guy, I elected to paint the skin after doing all those base coats. And I think the reason for that is because I knew it was going to be the hardest part, so I wanted to make sure I put in enough time. Cool, so that I think that's the skin basically done now. I'm just doing some really light highlights here. You can see the almost fully boned now, but very thin and watered down version of it getting painted on all of the various sections. And I think it's important to stress again just how thin the paint should be here, because when you've got a thin paint that's translucent, you create that depth. So I've pulled out now my favourite colour, what we like to call the magic wash. It isn't actually a Devlin mud, you can't get that colour anymore, but I've used the pot of Devlin mud. It's a combination of a few different colours. I don't recommend the new Citadel washes. I do recommend the Army Painter washes, they're excellent. This is an Army Painter wash mixed in with a little bit of mixing medium, and I think I actually changed the shading of it slightly by adding a little bit of a darker one in, or maybe a more sepia colour. Anyway, so that's the washes there. So here I'm washing this guy with, I think this might be black. Yeah, just really darkening up the colour of that leather with a black, and also putting a bit of shading into the purple, which I highlighted in between these two stages very quickly. So you can see the models now. That's what they look like with the shading. So I'm on to the bases. In the little break there, I actually painted the bases with a little bit of gold for the doodads, and painted the little sections that will be classified as swamp sections. I have a really cool water effects stuff that I purchased from one of our sponsors, and I use that after the model's completely varnished and finished. You just hit it with this. It's a water-based one, which is really cool. So this is the black. These little guys have got black beards, so just basically filling in the black there. And now I'm going in to highlight all the colours. The washes have dried, so highlighting the rope there with a mixture of bone and white, and then also doing the same to the cloth wrappings. Just a very thin highlight. The colour of these models with the depth of the shading, just doing one highlight over the top of a wash will give the colour such vibrancy. So it's a really easy thing to do, and it doesn't take that much longer, but it really adds to the effect. So if you generally just do a wash, I highly recommend adding a highlight over the top, and it'll come out a lot better. When you do that though, sometimes it's important that you actually paint the original colour first. It doesn't need to be done with this bone colour, but with other ones it can help. So yeah, fairly easy highlights there. And doing the same thing with the leather, which is going over. This is actually with the original colour, the brown, the flat earth as it is, the layer model colour. and just basically creating a little bit more highlight for those leather areas. It's not an essential stage, and I think if I was truly in a rush, I probably just would have put this aside. But these guys, I need them to look as close as possible to the original ones I did, which is why I'm taking as long as I would have normally taken. So just highlighting the silver now. So when you hit the silver color with that rusty wash, it dulls it all down and you lose a lot of the shine. So it's important to re-highlight with silver after you've done that. But it's a really good idea to leave some of those shadows with that dulled down color, because shadows and rust obviously isn't reflective and metallic, whereas the light shining off it is what creates that shine. So leaving the flat colors in the shadows is actually true to life, realistic. I do have a lot of rust effects on my old army. It's something that I've phased in and out depending on the models. The more aquatic models, which is these guys obviously, the pirates tend to have a bit more rust, and the jacks I like to have a bit of rust on. But just doing that little thing on the belt strap notch, and just going through with a little bit of highlighting again on the skin. Just once I put the other colours together and had a look at them, you could see that the skin tone wasn't quite bright enough. It didn't quite match in with the other colours, so just really giving it a little bit more shading there. So this model now looks fairly close to finished, and I mean that's quite surprising when you think about the fact that I've just airbrushed that yellow on. It's just a flat colour, but because of the airbrush and the way that the paint strikes the model and then hitting that with a wash, it actually gives it almost all of the shading that you would normally paint on a colour. But it is a slightly different tone to the other models, which you can see in the background. So what I've done is I've mixed my yellow that you can see in the background, the Vallejo yellow, with a tan colour, trying to replicate that golden yellow that G-Dub used to have in their line. So it's not quite perfect, but I'm just basically going over that yellow with this colour now, and it's really easy to do because the yellow itself is an easy colour to paint over. But had I not done the airbrush of the white and then the yellow, this would be a stage that would take about 30 coats. So once I've done that, I'm going in with a white and yellow mix and just highlighting the very edges of the model, the edges of the yellow sections with that colour. Really, it's actually a really simple thing to do, but it does make the model look a lot better. And now I'm just dabbing some rust on. I use a couple of different colours for the rust. I've got an orange colour, which is just a flat orange from Vallejo, and then I've got a GW special effects, a rust effect. These GW, they make a couple of different special ones. I've got a blood one which I've used on my Kador forces, and then this one which is a rust. It's a very thick pigment. You sort of actually mix it down with water and then just dab it on. It's really cool. Some of the GW new paints are good, some of them aren't. I think this one is one I recommend. I think they're called technical paints or something, so that's pretty cool. So just doing those little bits of rust, and then painting the edge of the base in black, because I am pretty much done. This is the last stage in any model, and you'd be surprised how much this actually ties the whole model together. So that's me done. I'll switch back to normal video now. Okay guys, so I am all done by the shouting. It's been about an hour and a half, hour 45, so a little bit quicker than I predicted. Here is the models right now. I've just finished the last stages. The spray varnish is drying as we speak. Once that dries, I will glue my little grass on, and I'll put together a picture of the finished models for you so you can check it out. But thank you very much for watching a Doge breakfast, and if you would like to see more footage of me doing painting and things like that, I would love to hear about it, so let me know. Thanks very much. See ya.